Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today we are going to recap the Prairie Trail Readathon. In my mug, I have some watermelon peach mango tea, which normally I drink iced, but I wanted it hot today. And that I bought in a little mercantile shop in the middle of Missouri somewhere, which I thought was appropriate for discussing the Prairie Trail Readathon. I'm going to try and do this video quickly. I apologize, it's at night. I don't like to film at night because the lighting isn't great and my ring light doesn't work great, so I didn't even bother pulling it out this time. And I don't have time to edit, so it's going to be as it is. So hopefully I can speak concisely without a lot of stumbling and we can get this video up without too much mishap. We hope. I just got to get it done. Okay, so apologies in advance for any inferior quality. The dishwasher's running. Life. It's life right now. Okay, so anyways, hopefully you are not here for perfection because you will not find it. This is my journal spread for the Prairie Trail Readathon. I just copied my game board that I designed and I put it straight into my journal and I just tracked by coloring in the blocks as I read the books and went around. And then on the next page, I had the cards for each of the prompts, and underneath them, I wrote what I read for each of those prompts. So let's just go through those, and I will tell you what I did for each prompt. First of all, injured oxen. Now, these are not necessarily in the order that I put them anywhere else. That's how I put them in here. I wasn't really paying attention to the order. So anyways, injured oxen. For 5 points, you were supposed to unhaul a book. And so I unhauled A Man Called Uva somewhere in the middle of Missouri when I was on vacation. Put it in a little free library to bless someone else. I enjoyed the writing and I could tell where the story was going, and I knew that I would really enjoy the concept of the story and the plot and all of that stuff. There were just some other things about the book that I did not love that were enough to outweigh the things that I liked about it, so I unhauled it. And then supply replenishment was to find a new to you author for 15 points. And I did not do one. I did not add one to this prompt. Although in hindsight, one that I put for the next prompt, I could have put here. About that in a second, but I didn't, so whatever. River Crossing was the next one. And that was basically any book you read that didn't fit in any of the other prompts could go for River Crossing. And you could do as many of those as you wanted for 10 points each. And I read two, Edmund Bertram's Diary by Amanda Grange. And that was just a mood read for fun. I found it at the library and I wanted to read it. So that was 10 points for me and it was fine. It wasn't my favorite in that series, but it wasn't terrible. I enjoyed the perspective on Edmund Bertram that it gave. It was fine. And then I also read the Epic of Gilgamesh. That's the one I was thinking I could put here for a new to me author. I mean, that's kind of silly. And also, you know, who exactly wrote Gilgamesh? Like, do we even know? I don't think we know, but you know, it could have worked, but I didn't. So it goes here for River Crossing. And I read that for my Reading the Classics challenge, which was to read a translated work. And since English wasn't even a thing at the time that Gilgamesh was written, it's definitely been translated. So that fit for that prompt. And then we have Lost Trail, and the prompt was to finish a series. And so I finished the Emma M. Lyons series. Well, I got caught up to date. I read volume 8 and I really enjoyed it more than I had the previous 1 or 2 books. And I like when periodically Beth Brower will dig a little deeper into some heavier material in the storyline and in the plot of the book. And so she did that in volume 8 and I enjoyed that. I don't want every book to be like that because I'm not looking for heavy reading when I pick up Emma M. Lyon. But I like that she digs a little deeper on occasion and gives more substance and depth to the characters in the story in this way. So I enjoyed that about it. So that was for Lost Trail. Coming over here to Drought, that was to read a book by a favorite author, a backlist from a favorite author. And so I read On the Cliffs of Foxglove Manor by Jamie Jo Wright. That was also for Jane Reed's Christian Fiction Reading Challenge. The prompt for August was to read a suspense book, which went along also with the reading challenge that Jeanette was hosting with her friends. And so I read a Christian fiction suspense novel by Jamie Jo Wright, which was On the Cliffs of Foxglove Manor, and it was good. It was not my favorite by Jamie Jo Wright. I wasn't as invested in the characters. The storyline was fine. It was okay, but it wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't bad either. It was kind of meh. And then Jane Austen's poetry was for the 250th Jane Austen birthday celebration, and I had never read Jane Austen's poetry. I've read basically everything by Jane Austen, but never her poetry, so that was fun. I really enjoyed that. Her poems were funny. I didn't always understand the context for all of them, but they were so funny to read. And then Supply Replenishment was the next one, and the prompt was to meet a fellow traveler or stop at a fort or read a book with a buddy. And so I did buddy read in August, but, and that was Westering Women by Sandra Dallas. But I actually put that for another prompt, so didn't get the points for that. But that could have gone there because I did do a buddy read. Speaking of which, dysentery was the main prompt that you had to do in order to participate in the readathon. Read a fiction book, a historical fiction about westward expansion. And I actually read 3, and I did not expect to do that. But also the 3 that I read were kind of meh, and one was downright did not like, and the one was kind of no, and the other one was fine. Not amazing, but fine. So I've already ranted about Westering Women. If you are curious about my rant, I will link that video up there if you want to hear me rant about why I did not like this book so much. And also, Lauren, who was reading with me, didn't love it either. I wasn't the only one, but many people did love it. So disregard our opinion and give it a try. You may actually really love it. That was Westering Women by Sandra Dallas. And then Laura's Dream, in my last week's video, I went into detail about what I didn't like so much about this one. I was loving it, but there started to be some red flags for me about halfway through, and I was thinking, okay, well, there's still time to work through these issues and for the story to end up being great by the end. But that didn't happen. There wasn't the resolution I was hoping for. There wasn't the plot or the character development that I was hoping for. It all just kind of actually unraveled and fell apart for me personally. So I didn't give many stars to this one either. I didn't hate it, but I didn't give it a lot of stars. This one by Allison Pittman, Laura's Shadow, it did have some great writing. So there was that going for it. It was the plot or the absence of it that I didn't like, and the character development was lacking. Those aspects didn't do it for me, but the actual writing was very good. And it's based on characters, minor characters from the Little House series. So that was fun, with a lot of nods and allusions. She alluded to Laura in this story frequently. Would that be allusions? That doesn't sound right. But anyway, the other one I read was A Moonbow Night by Laura France. And this one I loved. The setting was amazing. I actually really liked the characters as well, as I remember. It was at the beginning of August. I think I probably ended up giving it 4 stars, maybe 3. I can't remember for sure. I don't think there was anything that I hated about it. It was fine. It was better than say Edmund Bertram's Diary, for example. I probably would put it on a notch above On the Cliffs of Foxglove Manor as well. In part because I prefer historical fiction to suspense at any rate. So it was pretty good. I do not regret reading this one at all. I'm trying to read all of Laura France's backlist, so I could have put that one in the drought prompt as well. But it was pretty good. Not terrible, not great, but fine. And that brings me to Mountain Pass. And I saved this for last because this was my most successful reading of this whole event. And that was to read a nonfiction book about westward expansion or Prairie Trail or the Oregon Trail or anything like that. And the books that I read for that were my favorite books of the month. So good. These were the stars that blew all of the other books out of the water. They were amazing. And I don't say that often about nonfiction. So, I mean, there you have it. First of all, The Indifferent Stars Above. I don't know that I've ever read such a beautifully written nonfiction book. The prose in this is fantastic. The story itself is the real story from history, very well researched, so it's not an easy read. Not easy at all. In fact, it was hard to read at times, and I made a lot of different kinds of faces. Many of them were grimaces. Sometimes I literally covered my eyes. Sometimes I wanted a little brain bleach. It was very hard to read, but it was written with compassion and elegance and eloquence, and I can't recommend it highly enough. If you enjoy historic nonfiction, or I guess probably a better way to put it is nonfiction about history on historical topics, that's well researched and well written, I mean, it's really good. So 5 stars, all the stars. I mean, I don't often gush about a nonfiction book, but this, yeah. And this one is staying on my shelves. I'm not getting rid of this one. It's one that I'm gonna make room for. The other one that I really loved as well, and this was a gift to me. It was a beautiful, generous gift from a subscriber. And I cannot express how much I appreciate the generosity of that, but it is an amazing book. This is Pioneer Girl. It was originally written by Laura Ingalls Wilder. She actually wrote it before she wrote the Little House series. Initially, she and her daughter Rose were trying to sell this book as a memoir, and they were having trouble finding a publisher to sell it. And eventually, like, they worked and reworked it and revised it, and in the end, they started creating fiction from it instead, written for children rather than for adults, which this was originally intended for an adult audience. So this particular book, edited by Pamela Smith Hill and annotated by her, it gives you all of the background history and context of that story and how this book was foundational for the Little House series, how it was developed into the Little House series, the steps that it took to get to that point. She goes into what the facts in this book, in Pioneer Girl, that are not clear or murky, or when Laura was writing them down, she misremembered dates or ages or places or something like that. Pamela Smith Hill dug into the research and found the data and the information and the references on the resources that confirmed what Laura Ingalls Wilder said, or like was, well, actually this happened the following year, or this person she's talking about lived here, or etc. All of this stuff. She dug into all the names and places and dates and everything that Laura Ingalls Wilder mentions in this book, and she verified all of it, provided extra information, background information on the people. So interesting. Now, it does have a lot of annotations, and initially, I will admit, I was daunted by that, and I wasn't sure that I would want to read all of them, but as I was reading the book, I actually found the vast majority of them highly interesting, and I wanted to read them. They were so informative and so helpful. Some people don't like that the annotations are right there next to the text of the book. I personally like that because I wanted to read them all and I didn't want to be flipping back and forth. I find that extremely annoying. So I would much rather have that kind of annotation. If it's just an annotation saying, like, quoting the source of something, I don't care about that. You can put that in the back of the book. But annotations that have actual text I want to read, that are explaining everything, absolutely. Put it right next to the text. I want to see it. So I personally appreciated that formatting in this book. But it's not for everyone. So if you think that would bother you, keep that in mind. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved Laura's story herself from her words. I loved how it was so similar to the Little House series, but also it was a different perspective. And it was in, a different sequence, and some things were different, etc. It was very interesting. I also really enjoyed how Pamela Smith Hill took us through what made the Little House series fictional, the ways that Laura adjusted the story. Now, basically, I would say like 85 to 90% at least of what happens in the Little House series were actual factual events. However, she tweaked them and made them fictional. Some of the characters are different, involved in specific sequences of stories. Sometimes the sequence is different. It happens in a different place or a different time than it happened in her actual life. Things like that. But the bones of the story are truly autobiographical. And you can see that when you're reading this book. It really helps to flesh that out and give perspective on the Little House series. So I personally found it very interesting. I really enjoyed my time with that book, and I am so thankful that I was able to read it. It was actually kind of the inspiration in part for this whole series, plus the fact that I was able to go last year and visit the Ingalls home in DeSmet, South Dakota, and the museum that's there. And it kind of was the spark that led to this whole readathon. So having covered that, covers pretty much all of the reading that I did in the month of August. So this, I guess, serves or functions as my monthly wrap up as well. I really enjoyed my time with all of these books. As far as a monthly wrap up goes, I just want to also mention that I finished the summer book bingo that Tiffany at Beautiful Minutia is doing. And that was the other thing I was working on throughout August. And I got everything but sci-fi or fantasy. I didn't have time. And I was too focused on the Prairie Trail Readathon books. I didn't want to step away from them because I was just so engrossed in the subject and really enjoying what I was reading with that. So I didn't dig into any sci-fi or fantasy. So I missed one box there. But that was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And now I am doing Chantel's autumn bingo. So that's a lot of fun. I ended up not actually reading anything that was more than 400 pages. I thought that, I would just naturally come across something like, normally something I read is at least that long, but nothing was. So I didn't add anything to that one. So that is how my reading went in the month of August. Definitely my favorite book was The Indifferent Stars Above for the whole month. Highly recommend. Let me know in the comments how you did on the Prairie Trail Readathon. I have seen some of your monthly recaps and seen your videos about how you did. Some of you have mentioned in my Discord server, which it was so much fun to be talking about these books that we were reading. It was a very active community and I really enjoyed that. I love that aspect of reading together with everybody and reading on a central focus. That was so much fun. But let me know in the comments here, even if you have told me on the Discord server, just let me know what your favorite books were from the Prairie Trail Readathon that you were able to read and what you have put on your TBR for next year, because yeah, there were some I didn't get to, especially some nonfiction, and I'm definitely putting those in my pile for next year for sure, and looking forward to that already. So let's keep chatting about it in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Bye.